Namaste and welcome, friends. My name is Pranjali, and it is a great privilege for me to be associated with Global Women Power. Global Women Power was founded by Mrs. Al-Kamadan in 2015 with a motto of educate, enhance, and empower. You have heard about heroes and superheroes, but today we are going to talk about she rose. She who rose and made best of the circumstances by leaving a mark in her own way. And in this series, today we have a very, very special guest. Let me introduce you to my guest today, Usha Arun. Usha is a mother of a special need child. Usha is a woman. Usha has her own share of struggle, and yet she turned the tide in her favor and made a mark, and that's why she is our hero. Please join me in welcoming Usha. Usha, how are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me today.
So, we are here to talk about so many issues and so many things you have faced in your life. But most importantly, I want to know about your journey, how it started. Please tell us about it.
Sure. My journey started about 17 years ago with, I was at that time working in Boston, and I was expecting my first child, and what happened was, just like any mom, I had dreams about, the new life that I was bringing into the world, and my son was born in the year 2001. And he was perfect, there were no problems, no challenges. And after that, one thing led to another. And soon around when he was a year old, I started noticing that he had lost some of the skills that he had gained. So up until then, he was hitting all the milestones. And then I started noticing that he would not respond to his name. And then he was, covered with eczema from top to toe. So that's when I really started, going to one professional to another to really understand and figure out what was going on. So it was, food allergies to loss of words that he had gained. And finally, at the age of 3, he was diagnosed with autism. So, and that really started my journey with him, with autism, where I had to quit my job because he needed all the attention I could give him.
Yes.
And at that time, I just felt so fortunate I had the diagnosis because I had answers to something that was puzzling me on an everyday basis. Watching your child suddenly exhibit certain behaviors and many different things that were on a physiological level, where he was not gaining weight, he was not sleeping, so just different things that I just felt so relieved that I had answers to some of the questions that I had as to why certain things were happening.
Since you knew what it is all about.
Yes.
Because as a mother, you know that a new mother has her own share of struggles. Being a mom is such a big, difficult transition where you have to literally give 24 hours of your day. But being a mother of a special need child is more than what we ask for.
Yes.
And you definitely had an answer, but then how did you cope with it?
Well, coping is something that I would say I struggled with because it was new to me. I had to educate myself on just different things about what was going on with him. That's when we moved. When he was 3 years old, we moved from Boston to California.
Okay.
So we stumbled upon a child psychologist. And a very strong lady, and her words still echo in my mind today. And she said, let's not focus on the diagnosis, let's focus on how to get him better and more functional. And she started me on that journey. And one of the things that she said was, you need to be educated. And I'm here to coach you because I can help you to a certain extent. But you need to have all the strength to understand what your child is all about. Only then can you help him. And only then can you move forward.
Sure.
So every Friday we used to drive an hour from the South Bay to Marin
Okay.
to meet her to get coached in an unconventional intervention called DIR floor time. Most people who have gone through this journey with autism resort to another methodology, which is ABA, which is Applied Behavioral Analysis.
Okay.
But we decided that we would go in a more relationship-based intervention.
Okay.
So there was this...
So the other one is more medicational?
No, it is more a reward-based system.
I see.
So if a child does a certain task, then you reward the child. But the reward is the relationship that the child has with the caregiver. So you get down at the level of the child and you interact with the child. And through that, you build language skills and just, help the child to be able to take in information with all the senses. It's called sensory integration. So all of that I got coached and trained for many years. And that's what I think helped me to shift my focus from the diagnosis to actually, helping him to be more functional.
Yes. The first step is not working towards the treatment, but first getting educated ourselves.
Yes,
right?
because only when you educate yourself, you're able to advocate for your child.
Yes.
You're able to empower other moms.
Sure.
So I think that is key.
Yeah, and you talked about advertising it, but I have seen like mental illness is something people have taboos about it. There is a stigma, and people want to hide it.
Yes.
It's like if someone is physically incapable, people have sympathy, they'll open the door for them, and they understand it, but they don't know how to react, what to do, and what is mental illness. Did you face this kind of problems?
Well, when I started out, I made sure that, I educate and build awareness within my family. So, that was because you need a strong support system.
Sure.
And like they say, it takes a village to raise a child.
I know.
So you have to have the strong support of family, and that was my first step.
Okay.
And then I was very vocal with my close friends, and then I went into the schools that my son was in, and I started really talking to the teachers, educating them in terms of what the real issues were, how they could help him, how the children around him could embrace him. Because
So he
there
was
is
going
a
to the, I'd like to interrupt, so he was going to a normal school or was it a special needs school?
It was a regular preschool. He started out there.
see.
But
Okay.
I went in saying that I would be his aide.
Okay.
So I would spend the time with my son in the classroom, educating the teacher and other children to make sure that he is embraced. So that was my first step. Did I face a lot of problems, challenges? Sure. There were people who felt that there was really nothing wrong with him, or I was just, exaggerating the true challenges that he faced, or that he was not disciplined enough. So you hear all of that, and you have to go beyond all of those. And I think that is the challenge for a mom, to be able to filter out all those noises and be able to, move forward. So I would say that was really my struggle initially. How do you really have your son and you in a mainstream environment and make them understand that he also needs to be included, And something that I feel is a right to dignity. Everybody has a right to dignity.
Yes.
And I think every child has the right, irrespective of what differences they may have, has a right to education.
Sure.
So I think that was my drive in terms of putting myself out there in schools, in society, within the family unit. So I felt that is what it was, building it one brick at a time, and really crucial times, really understanding what would it feel like if I was on the other side. So you would have to have that level of perspective in order to understand and gain support. And if you talk to any special needs mom, they would tell you that they are really not looking for sympathy, but support and empathy.
Sure.
Okay. So that's something that I was also trying to tell people, that you gain strength from empathy and support, not from sympathy.
Sympathy, yes. And how did you manage that? Because you're already struggling with a kid, you're trying to educate him, you're dealing with his mental and physical problems on day-to-day basis, and at the same time, you have to make a case where you are looking for passionate people who are there to support you.
Yes.
How did you do that?
One of the things that I did was, I think a mom needs to take care of herself. And one of the things that I did was to hire some students, university students,
Okay.
who were interested in special education. So it was their passion. So I trained them in some of the interventions that I was, doing with my son. So that gave me a break away from my son, so that I could recharge my batteries, so that I could give my best to my son. So that was how I coped in the initial years. So it could be you hire students, but for those who cannot do that, I think a grandmother or a cousin or somebody in the family could actually be that support, where they also get trained. Because I know a number of families where the grandmothers actually took on some of these difficult tasks
Yes.
of getting trained and coached, so that they could also do that and give the mother a break.
No, this is such an important point, because see, this is under global women power, and we are talking about the global world. And United States fortunately has so many avenues, options, and facilities. But when you go to India or any third world country, we don't have all these options there. And in this case, it is very, very important to take it on our own.
Yes.
So as you are saying, we have to educate ourselves, we have to train people, and that's how we can go forward.
Yes, and also there are support groups. There are
Sure.
Yahoo support groups that I got on initially, and I'm still on a lot of them. I think India in today is, I think, moving towards having more support.
Yes,
And also I think building that community, that form of community, and I think that's important, because you get ideas from those support groups, because there are already moms who have gone through the process,
Yes.
and they are there to lift you up.
Definitely.
But all that you have to do is put your foot forward and make that effort. And
Yes.
once you make that initial effort,
Yes.
things follow.
Very nice. And talking about like how who have gone through that can give you a better advice. And I understand your son is already 17 now.
Yes.
So how did his education go? Like you put him in a normal school, and then
Yes,
you
so he
educated
was
him?
he was in a mainstream here from preschool through 5th grade.
Yes.
And then he was diagnosed, just not with autism at that point, but with an additional autoimmune disease, which is arthritis. So he couldn't walk, he had swollen joints. So it took us a year to figure out and get a diagnosis. So once that happened, I just took it upon me to say that there wasn't a school system that I found that could accommodate all of his needs. So I said, I'm going to homeschool him.
Okay.
So I made my school, my home, a private school where you sign an affidavit with the Department of
Yes.
Education, and you
Yes.
make your own home a private school.
Yes.
And I educated him. for 3 years. That was through middle school.
Okay.
And then high school, he's in an independent program
Okay.
where it's still considered homeschooling, but it's an independent study program where they give you the curriculum.
Okay.
He learns at home. I support him at home.
At his own pace.
At his
he
own
does it.
pace. It's individualized, the education. And he's working towards his high school diploma now. He's a junior.
Very nice.
And there are courses on campus that he can take. So he takes one course right now, which is biology lab, every 2 weeks. But there are other courses also that he can take. There are accommodations that the school makes in terms of how they want him to show mastery, or how they assess him. So I think I've been very fortunate in terms of finding these different resources.
Yes.
And so like I said, it's the support groups, the all of that makes a big difference in terms of how you seek support, how you get support, and how you move forward.
Definitely. And talking about moving forward, I always have found in any journey, transition is the most difficult part.
Absolutely.
Right? And he's on that cusp where he's 17 years old and he has to be an adult now in an adult world.
Yes.
With normal circumstances and getting on his own. So how do you see his life and your life from now onwards?
Yes, that's a very good question. Now, the thing is that they have something called transitional planning that you start when they are, probably in 9th grade in this country, where you start really thinking about what are his strengths.
Yes.
And there are different pathways. So you could, go there is something called vocational training once they're out of high school, or you could have a community college path, or you could have a university path, depending on, where they fit in. And then there's a fourth path where they just, because it is an autistic spectrum, because there's low functioning to high functioning.
Yes.
There are just different pathways, and you have to actually carve the path for your child. And for my son right now, he's struggling with physiological issues because he was diagnosed with Crohn's last year. So every time you feel that you've made you've taken a step forward, there is something that pulls you back, and then you have to start all over again. So that is something that you learn to cope with over time. So right now he is on medication for his Crohn's. So he has 2 autoimmune, which he has arthritis and Crohn's. They're all interrelated, and then he has autism. So right now we are looking for him to get his high school diploma, and then we are preparing him to be set with certain skills where he can, if he wants to get into college, or if he wants to do some kind of vocational training, then I'm trying to find different resources for that. So attending different talks, different forums where parents who have been through this come and talk about the resources that are available. And then you have to, motivation is key. So whatever his passion is, you have to tap into that. And that's where I am. That's my phase right now in terms of, how to guide him. Where do you think that he will go? And in that process, I feel like I'm ready now to give back to the community because I've taken so much.
Yes.
So then you tell yourself that you have to be able to put yourself out there and be available for others.
Definitely.
Even if it is something small,
Yes.
Because I think strength comes from giving.
Exactly.
And the more you give, the more you feel that you feel empowered.
Such a
And I think that is what has driven me all these years to move forward. And so even when parents talk to me in India, when I gave a talk to about 50 odd parents, they said, what do you think is the most important thing? And I've said even if it's a little thing that you start, which is to volunteer.
Yes.
You need to get yourself out there.
Yes.
Take yourself away from your child and give to another child probably. And that satisfaction you will never get in a regular, mainstream job in a corporate world, there is that internal satisfaction, And like they say, like happiness is an internal job.
Yes.
So is strength.
Yes.
So every day you have to work at it. It's almost you're exercising, those things, those skill sets that you have, and trying to be stronger every day.
Yeah.
It's a process.
I'm so proud of you, Usha, that you're not looking for sympathy and you're not saying, why me? You are taking this opportunity to not only nurture your kid, but coming forward, helping other people. And such a great timing. It's like Autism Awareness Month, which is coming in April.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
2nd April is like the
World Autism Day, and
Yeah.
it has taken off in a big way. Autism Speaks actually started this campaign.
I see.
Where on April 2nd, they wear blue. It's called Light It Up Blue. So
Okay.
you wear blue and you spread awareness in your community. People run campaigns. About a few years ago, my niece who works at Stanford, she works at the Autism Lab in Stanford. She and I actually ran a campaign on Facebook where I had people really wear blue
Okay.
and talk about any family or any child that touched their lives with autism. And they had to post this campaign on their Facebook page for a day where they're also spreading awareness. And I got an overwhelming response because people were tagging each other, they were wearing blue, they were talking about a child that touched their life in a particular way. So I just felt that was very powerful. Social media is very powerful to get the word out, as you know. So that is something that parents have taken to now, and they dedicate a whole month. So it could be as small as just bringing a child in your neighborhood to play with a child with autism, because these children with autism have a heart. They actually they have the same desires that you and I have, which is human connection.
Yes.
And by isolating them and having a stigma associated, I just feel that there is so much work to be done on that front.
Definitely. And I think that's the most important thing. Seeing them as a child, not like a child with autism.
Yeah.
Right? And talking about that, tell me about your son. What is his name?
His name is Rohit.
And he's 17 years
He's
old.
17. I would like to believe that he's a very sweet, compassionate child. He has his own strengths. He is a pattern thinker. He loves to play chess. He is, I remember right from when he was young, he was always good with numbers.
Okay.
In fact, I thought I was raising a gifted child in the beginning. He likes to analyze, he likes to ask questions and debate about social causes.
Really?
So, he has very strong opinions about, whether it is about capital punishment or, what is the situation in amongst, children who have disabilities, the different, aspects of disabilities, what are they? So he likes to research and think about those kind of things. I think he's very fortunate that he's verbal. But there are other non-verbal children and adults, but they have found a way to communicate through typing. In fact, there are lots of children, lots of adults who are non-verbal, but they have found communicating through just typing, and they have found a way where they can also be part of society and contribute. So I think that is the beauty of having a diagnosis like autism, or any kind of differences, I think.
Yeah, you have raised such a powerful kid who has like his own opinion and he can argue and all that, but you have gone through this journey and achieved it. But it's very, very difficult when you start. And what would you like to tell or advise or suggest the new moms who just are facing this today? It has happened to them.
Yes.
They don't know what the future is.
Absolutely.
Right? For you, you know what
Yes.
has happened, and it is so positive. But the very first day when you know that your child has autism,
Yeah.
you have to deal with it.
Yes.
And how do you deal with
It is very tough, to be honest. It is very tough. Because as a mom, as a parent, you have dreams, right? And it all comes. It just shatters overnight.
it?
And that's when I think you have to, pull yourself together. It takes time, but you need to try and get help. That is the first step. And that help it could start very small within your family, where you spread the word. You say, this is what I'm facing. And, try to have conversations within the family.
Yes.
And then you have to extend that to, find professionals that can help.
Yes.
And in fact, when my son was diagnosed 14 years ago, the internet was not as big as it is today,
Yes. Now you can find everything.
You
on
can
internet.
find everything. And also, I would like to think that if you find that there is something that is odd in your child, bring it to the attention of the doctor, of the care, giver.
That's the most important
That is the
thing.
most important thing.
Yes.
Because now I think there are diagnostic tools that diagnose children as young as 6 months. And
Wow.
the sooner you diagnose, the better it is, because there is more hope.
Yes.
So don't wait. So I think you would have to really, when you see some signs, you take it to the professional. And you get your child diagnosed or tested or assessed as quickly as possible. And that's something that, I cannot overemphasize. That's very important.
Yes.
And then seek help.
Definitely. And on my personal experience, I would like to ask you one important question. One of my friends' son he has autism and he is going through a lot. But he said the most difficult problem is when you go out in public and your son is throwing tantrums and he is not able to adjust. People don't know. They think you are not a good parent. It comes down to parenting issues.
Yes.
So have you dealt with that kind of thing, and how to explain to people what do you do? Because you have to go out, you have to be in the society, and they are going to do what they will do.
Yes.
So,
That's a very good question, because that is something that I think even today over here in the United States,
yes.
parents are facing that.
Yes.
And that's what leads them to shut down and to hide, not able to express.
Yes.
I think that is, and that is where you have to really try and bring awareness. You would have to, whether it is in a playground,
Yes.
you are going to, in this journey, I have come across people who have been very empathetic. And I've also found that people on the other side have not been empathetic.
Yes.
So you try and you educate the people who don't understand. And the reason why they react that way is because of lack of awareness.
Yes.
They don't know enough to be able to respond in a good way.
Yes.
So it's a process and you have to try. And a lot of moms even to this day tell me that they feel isolated. Isolation is the number one factor in terms of, how a mom feels. I have gone through many periods of time where I have felt isolated. And I felt that every time I felt isolated, I have felt like I need to do something, to get myself out there. And I need to do something to get my son out there, to be included. And I think that is something that different organizations are doing different work, in terms of bringing inclusion, whether it is in the workplace. And today there are lots of organizations who are even hiring people with autism. They've looked at their strengths and they've said, this is what we would like, and we are going to target the autism population and bring them in for certain skills, that they carry. But it's
Such
more
a
in
positive
technology
beginning.
because they are, very good with that. But there are other areas also that I think needs a lot more work where you bring awareness. And I think the more moms who go out there
Yes.
and the more they talk about it openly, the better it's going to get,
Sure.
is what I would think.
Definitely. So, 17 years, a long journey. Any positive or any incident which touched your heart, which was related to your son? Would you like to share with our audience?
Sure. I think the most touching, I think incident was when my son was actually struggling with social skills. He still does.
Mm-hmm.
And when children around him, were able to be so sensitive to his needs, and they would come up to me and they would say, "We really want to help Rohit."
So, Usha, 17 years, a long journey. And I'm sure you faced some difficult incidents and some very positive and good incidents. So, anything that touched your heart, which you remember and you would like to share with our audience?
Sure, absolutely. This was actually in my son's elementary school. It was, with typically developing children, and they were sensitive enough and quick to understand that he was struggling socially.
Mm.
And something that came so naturally to them was a struggle for him. And I think that was what was very, very inspiring for me. Because as young as they were, they were willing to be my son's buddy, and they were willing to kind of take him along while playing during recess, or teaching him something new that he didn't know. And I think that was, when I got feedback from them saying that Rohit is a sweet child, I would like to be his buddy. I just felt like that was the turning point for my son, because he saw so much positivity around him, that he was also motivated, to connect with them. And I think it also came from their parents, because that is what they wanted for their child. They wanted their child to be empathetic. So it was a very good synergy, and good group work that I saw in that one particular school. And now that my son is 17, there is an organization called the Buddy Organization in the South Bay. It's run by high school students. And the founders happen to be, one founder actually, she's a high school student, and her brother has autism. So that's what inspired her to start this organization. And what they really do is, they are boys and girls in high school who go out and find people like my son to be their buddies. So that's why it's called the Buddy Organization. So I have this one boy who comes, he's a senior in high school. He comes every Friday, and he takes my son out for an hour or two. They go to the coffee shop, or they play chess. He's taught him how to play pool. Just get him out in the community, and trying to get him as independent as possible. So that's the kind of service that they provide. So I would say, like, there are so many of these children that touch your life, in so many different ways. So I would say that all of these children have really contributed to my son's positivity, because even children, can get into a negative zone, and you have to be able to give them that strength and that motivation. And so what these children are doing are simply amazing.
Definitely. And I think the overall responsibility, it's not just the family who is going through it. It's responsibility of all the people who are around.
Yes.
Right? We all need to be educated. We all need to know what's going on. And together we can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And Usha, I think not just as a mother of a special child, but as a mother, and not just as a mother, but as a person, you have inspired me. And
Thank
I'm
you.
so touched and inspired by your story. And I'm very sure our audience is too. So, on a concluding note, what would you like to tell our audience?
I would like to say this, that behind every empowered woman is, or a strong woman, is an empowered woman, and behind every empowered woman and successful woman is a strong woman.
Perfect. Shakti is the word. We all have that power within, and that's what Global Women Power wants to bring forward, and that's what our aim is. And we are so fortunate to have you as our guest. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me today.
And all the best to Rohit, Rohit's mom, all the people who are like Rohit, trying to make their way in the society. I wish them all the best, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.